stuff. So I've been here all day, and I just want to really congratulate the team here for this amazing event, for Lydia and her team. It's been really, really fantastic. And you know, if I think back to the 70s and 80s when I was back at school, no one knew about entrepreneurship. There were no shows like Dragon's Den. There were no enterprise events. There was nothing like this at all. And in fact, it wasn't a potential career to be an entrepreneur. And I was actually very lucky. I grew up above my dad's shop. So I lived in and around business my whole life. And that was the thing that gave me the inspiration to run my own business. So the thing I just want to say is, in business, you just never stop learning. Never stop learning. And I've learned huge amounts. So thanks to everyone so far. Now, I just want to set the scene before I start talking about my journey. And that is that the number one thing is that it's actually entrepreneurs that are changing the world. If you think of all the biggest changes that have happened in society and on this planet, they've all been led by people and great businesses. And it's a really interesting thing that I'm noticing, and as I watch what's going on in the world, and I just want to kind of put this in the context of way beyond business for you, that we're completely shifting away from a command and control way of being into inspire and empower. And it's really important because you need to understand, I don't want to get too political here, but this is the backdrop against which you're creating your businesses, is that the governments are very invested in controlling and controlling what goes on and trying to manage the people. And that goes across all the countries in the world. Whereas if you look at actually what's happening in the world of enterprise, and in things like finance, if you look at the way that the banks almost collapsed and they were kind of glued back together, those old structures are really breaking down. And the same thing is happening in business. The big businesses that I grew up with, they're collapsing one by one, and a lot of them are collapsing under the weight of their own integrity. So it's a really, really fascinating time of transformational change. And I passionately believe that the future lies with you guys doing these great businesses and really using business as your vehicle to transform the world, right? The second thing I just want to say about this conference, because I was thinking, you know, this conference, think big. Tell me, what's the biggest, let's think big now. What's the biggest thing you can think of? The biggest thing? Flying to the moon. What's even bigger than flying to the moon? World peace. Size of Alex's company. The biggest thing? Live forever. So I'm thinking about the universe. I'm thinking about dimensions. I'm thinking about infinite intelligence. And that sounds a bit woo-woo, but the thing I just really want to point out is that beyond this material realm, there are other dimensions, and there is an infinite intelligence and ordering power that governs the entire universe. And when you start getting into that flow and tapping into that magic, then you can create amazing, amazing, amazing things. And if you look at what Steve Jobs did with Apple, if you know anything about Steve Jobs and that he was using transcendental meditation and contacting light beings and other dimensions and channeling infinite intelligence, you get a sense of how he built Apple into the world, one of the world's biggest companies. And that does sound a bit woo-woo, but I promise you that all over the planet, entrepreneurs and business leaders are waking up to the higher consciousness and how they can use that infinite intelligence to create mind-blowing solutions. And when you tap into that magic, it's just awesome and really, really powerful. So I just wanted to kind of set the scene for that because, you know, most of business and teaching, and also, I guess a lot of your tutors will have been brought up with kind of things like SMART objectives. You know, it's got to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, and all that kind of crap. But the thing is, that's all coming from the left brain. And I promise you that if you just work from your logical mind, you will create a very, very limited business, because actually where you want to be working from is the right brain, because the right brain is where creativity lives, and it's the right brain that can tap into that infinite potential. So I would actually say to you, don't think big. I'd say dream big, dream big. But actually I'd say think small. And if you look at every business that's had success, it's had success from taking something that worked on a micro level, like the guy with the jam earlier. I think he's not here anymore. But, you know, just creating something that people loved on a really, really small scale, and then taking that bigger and bigger. Because if you get proof of concept on a very small scale, then you can build it into a big business. And every single big, huge, massive global business started with a niche concept. So the niches and small businesses are really where it's at. And actually, when I'm sure you guys who are already in business will know this, that actually, whilst you can have that kind of big vision and dreaming big, that actually success in business is getting 1,000 or thousands and thousands and thousands of small things right. It's a real tapestry where every transaction, every interaction, every customer, every product, every single conversation you have is a stitch in your tapestry. And all of those stitches go to make up this magnificent picture that you're creating. So every customer is valuable, every transaction is valuable, and it's really easy to forget that and to get sloppy with the detail and not to look after the small stuff because you're after the big stuff. And I've seen so many businesses fail. It's very easy not to look after the detail. So I would really say, yeah, actually start thinking small, because actually at a micro level, it's the same structure at a micro level as a macro level. That picture of the universe, the Milky Way, is reflected in the smallest atom. Get it right on a small scale, you can expand it up and amplify it. So, and another part of that, because it's all about these small stitches, I would absolutely say, and to echo what's been said before, if you're going to choose a business, absolutely choose something that you just love, that you can't wait to get up in the morning and go to work on it, and that just brings you pleasure, because you'll be working on this day in, day out, and when you're not working on it, you'll be thinking about it, you'll be sleeping and dreaming about it. So really important to put your passion at the heart of your business, because it's the greatest gift. I mean, I don't ever go to work, and if my work ever starts to feel like it's hard work, then I know I've got something really badly wrong. Yeah, does that make sense? And I'm sure, who here is doing a degree that they actually don't like doing? Dare you admit to this? You kind of think, oh shit, I chose the wrong thing. And there is nothing worse than that. Who said that? There is nothing worse than working on a business or in a job that really doesn't turn you on, you know. So absolutely pursue what you love. Now, okay, so I'm just going to talk a bit about my story, but importantly, because I've told my story so many times that actually I'm personally quite bored with it. But I will tell you some of the key learnings. And I actually I didn't get into university. I was actually rejected from every university I applied for. And yes, true. So you guys are really lucky that you are here. Wow, isn't this amazing? Well, I actually started out as an office junior, just filing and making coffee. That was all I could do, really. I was kind of a bit of a failure. And I had so many rejection letters, not just from every university I applied for, because then I applied for management training programs and all sorts of stuff. I had so many rejection letters, and that was from the people who bothered to reply. I could literally have wallpapered my room with them. And I actually really look back on that, and I get that was such a great training for business, to be able to keep going despite rejection after rejection and stuff not working and it just not happening. just to be able to keep going. So I found this little job as an office junior, and I worked my way up in accountancy, and this is back in the 80s, and actually it was a very inspirational decade because some of the power women were just floating on the stock exchange, like Anita Roddick and Debbie Moore of Pineapple, and it was a great era of capitalism's a dirty word, but actually, if you think, well, you don't know this because you guys are all too young, but before Margaret Thatcher came on the scene, Britain was kind of just like ruled by trade unions, and there were strikes, and the 80s were when people really kind of started to see that they could actually take their future in their hands and really create something out of it. So it was a very inspirational time to actually start out on that journey. And I was working in accountancy, and I specialized in taxation of entrepreneurs and small businesses. And one of the really interesting things that I learned from working on hundreds of clients, if not thousands of clients, and this was picking up a client several years into their business journey and then reading back in the file, and eventually somewhere back in the file, right at the very beginning, would be the business plan. So I'd read this business plan and then I'd compare it to where the client actually was like 2 or 3, 4 years down the line. And this business plan was complete and utter nonsense. I have never, ever, never seen a business plan that bore any reflection to what actually happened in reality. And so, as a dragon, I still get people emailing me like, could you just review my business plan? And they'll attach a kind of 67-page document that they've spent weeks on. And I'm just like, why did you write it? Why did you write this thing? Well, I thought I had to. I thought that's what you had to do in business. You have to write a business plan, right? And I would say it's impossible to write a business plan. It's impossible to write a business plan. Because how do you know? There are so many factors which are going to affect your journey that it's impossible to write a business plan. So the thing I would really say to you is crucial. You have your vision, you have your broad idea of the kind of thing that you want to do, and you allow as much flex and willingness to adapt and adjust and learn and trial and test and find your way until you get to success. So to me, success lies in flexibility, because it's all very well to send you guys off and say, yes, go into business. But the statistics are 2/3 of all businesses fail in the first 18 months. Of the ones that survive, only 5% are profitable, and only 1% go on to turn over £1 million plus. Yeah? So basically, that means that 95% of businesses either fail or are just about keeping their head above water. And I would really love you to be amongst the 5% that are sustainable and are making profit and go on to be multi-million-pound businesses. Are we there with that? Yeah? Are we agreed? Because we don't want to be struggling, right? Because I speak at enterprise events all over the country, and I have done for 10 years now, and I ask every audience, who here is in flow, where money is flowing and it's profitable and you've got no debt and it's wonderful? And out of every 100 people, about 3 people put their hand up. The vast, vast majority of people in business are struggling to make ends meet and make stuff work. And the way that you can really help yourself to run a successful business is to be willing to let go of your idea of what you thought your business should look like when you started out. Because opportunities, people are gonna, when you start sending out that energy and that vision, and you start doing that dreaming, and you start energizing your business, all sorts of stuff will show up that you couldn't have dreamed possible. That's where the magic starts showing up. And it's the magic that's going to help you, grabbing those opportunities and running with them. That is what's going to take you to success, okay? So this was my first business, Red Letter Days. I started it in 1989 when I was 24 years old, so probably about a couple of years older than you guys. The interesting thing back then is it wasn't just before the internet, it was actually before mobile phones. So actually, I learned, I'd say I'm a classical entrepreneur in that I didn't have all of this kind of social media, technology stuff. So actually, the same principles apply. It's just that you can do business so much faster now. But the interesting thing about this journey was that no matter how much push marketing we did, advertising, buying adverts, we did radio, TV, we tried every form of advertising imaginable, okay? Despite whatever we were doing, even in the time when we were spending millions of pounds trialing TV advertising, consistently 81% of our business came from recommendations and referrals, consistently. So if you think, even in the times we were spending like maybe £1 million on TV advertising, that recommendation referral was worth £5 million or whatever, £4 or £5 million. So never underestimate the power of PR and referrals and the goodwill that you're generating, because your customers are your biggest marketing department, okay? The second thing I say, the idea for Red Letter Days was simply just the seed of an idea. What do you give the man who has everything? Because at the end of the 80s, everyone had all the gadgets that they needed. So it was like, how do you package an experience? So if you want to give someone a trip in a hot air balloon or a motor racing day or a health spa weekend, how do you actually package it and give it to them? And so this was just a simple mail order company with a load of different experience ideas. And you could just buy an experience for someone as a gift, and it was just a really simple idea. But the great thing about this business was that as the business grew, I got invited to do all of this stuff. And that's what I'm saying. Put your passion at the heart of your business, because my life, I was being invited on the Orient Express to go to Venice, and then to be jumping out of an aeroplane and go tandem skydiving, and then flying off in a hot air balloon. And I lived this most amazing life of doing incredible stuff. So business really is a chance to live your dreams, right? So choose the vehicle carefully. So yeah, choose a business you can have fun with. And the other really key thing that I would say about business is that money comes as a byproduct, and it's the byproduct of creating great service, great products, brilliant services, amazing experiences. If you start chasing money, you've kind of gone to the wrong end of the spectrum, because money is something that kind of shakes out of giving great value. So I'd just say to you, focus on creating great value. If you keep focusing on great value, somewhere down the line, provided you've got the business model right, somewhere down the line, the money will show up. Now, having said that, it took a good 2 years to get this business off the ground. And I very quickly hit the pit. And someone was asking earlier about, I think it was you, about women in business. And is it a disadvantage to be a woman in business? And I was looking at, who was that earlier? Zoe. Wow, that's no disadvantage, is it, to look like her, to be a woman in business? But the thing, and she was like, well, women have got more balls than men. But actually, there's a tremendous advantage when you're a woman in business. Sorry, guys, about this one. Just wanted to make this point. There's a tremendous advantage in vulnerability and femininity. And it's so tempting for women in business to go into that, I'm as hard as the blokes, and to go into that dragon energy of like, yeah, I'm just as tough as the men. But actually, femininity is a very powerful thing, particularly in this new era of transparency and collaboration and honesty and ethics. And don't forget, 70% of customers, 70% of buying decisions are either made or influenced by women. Yeah, so if you create a business that is very feminine in its approach, and by feminine I don't mean female, I mean feminine in terms of those kind of values of honesty and integrity. I'm not saying please don't get that I'm saying that men aren't, because masculine, feminine is not male, female, right? There's a big difference. But when you work from those kind of feminine values, you can actually attract a lot of support for your business, and a lot of people, expressing your vulnerability is actually incredibly powerful. And the way that I survived with business was to actually admit that I was failing. And I was actually freelancing at the time, and I said to my boss, I know this is a great idea, I just cannot work out how to make it work. I just don't know. I'm completely out of my depth. And he said to me, go and see one of my clients. He's a guy called Barry Davis. He'll help you. He's a marketeer and a designer. And I went along to this guy. I took all my stuff, my brochure, my adverts that I'd wasted loads of money on. And I was really hoping that he would say, oh, Rachel, yeah, it's great. And he just looked at them and he just said, Rachel, you've wasted your money. And my heart really sank because I'd spent every penny that I'd earned in my career girl days in accountancy. I'd invested every penny in this business and nothing was working. Our first year turnover was less than £10,000. I mean, it was a disaster. And I had no more money. And because I went to this guy and I asked him for help, luckily he took me under his wing, and he was my first great mentor. And he taught me about the power of marketing and of branding, and specifically how important it is. This is really, if you take nothing away from today, this tip that he taught me all those years ago. In business, you have 7 seconds. You have 7 seconds before someone decides to click out of your website or keep reading. 7 seconds before someone decides to watch your YouTube video or to just say, actually, I'm not interested in this. If you can make your message of not just what you do, but what's in it for me, because no one's interested in you. I promise you, no one is interested in you, no one is interested in your business, and no one is interested in your problems, your life, your story. They're not interested. They're only interested in what you can do for them, what you can do for me. If you start saying what you can do for me, that's when you've captured my attention, okay? And that's the same in marketing. So if you can get across not just what you do, but what you can do for me in 7 seconds so that I then read further, I don't throw your thing in the bin, I don't click out of your website, you are way ahead. You are way ahead of everyone else. And I still see this with websites. We do this, we do this, we do this. Aren't I great? Aren't I great? People are just not interested. What do you do for them? And how can you transform their lives? So luckily, thanks to meeting this guy, we implemented his stuff. And the business literally took off. And I persuaded my first husband to fund the campaign that this guy suggested. It was just a simple little campaign of putting fold-out posters into Sunday supplement magazines that December. And literally within 3 weeks of launching this thing, the phones were ringing off the hook and money was pouring into the business. And I really got from that a business can go from nothing working to completely transforming and completely, it's just, it reaches a tipping point. A business can really reach a tipping point very, very fast. And from that moment, everything with the business really snowballed. And it was like we'd got proof of concept, the proof of concept that I was talking about earlier. We'd found the way to make it work, and it had taken 2 years. And during that 2 years, I was so close to giving up so many times. But I just was holding on. And by asking for help, that's how I reached that turning point. And then literally the business took off and really snowballed. And we got to the point by 2001 where we were turning over £10 million and making £1 million profit a year. So it was a really fantastic business. But at that point, so can I just say here, if you ever get a business, if you ever get to the point with your business where you're making £1 million profit a year, please promise me you will be happy and content and very thankful and just accept that. Please just promise me that one thing. But you see, us entrepreneurs never can. And who was I talking to at lunchtime about the, to Super Jam guy actually, wasn't it? About this relentless quest, this ambition that you get this path that you go on where it's never enough. So you're making £1 million profit a year and you think, wow, what if I could push this to 10 million? What if I could take turnover to 50 million? What if I could float on the stock exchange like my heroines? What if I could be like Anita Roddick? And then you start winning awards and you start getting into ego and you start getting into fame and you want it bigger and you want it better and you want to be famous and you want to be on television and all the rest of it, and you really go into ego. And I have to say, that is a massive danger time, because when you go into that place, you are probably at your most vulnerable when you think you've got the Midas touch and you get over-inflated. So actually what happened is we embarked on, and I was winning awards by this point, and then I was approached by the BBC. Would you like to be in this new TV show we're doing called Dragon's Den? I'm like, yes, I'd love to do that, yeah. And we embarked on this massive expansion campaign, which was the downfall of that business. And we embarked on this plan to take turnover. By that point, we got to 14, 18 million. We got a lot of retail deals. And we just decided we were going to go for gold, and we were going to take it to 50 million, and we were going to float the company. And that was going to be my big kind of exit plan. But the interesting thing was, the reason I wanted to do that was because in my head, I'd started to scope my next business. And I had this idea that I would create, I'd sell Red Letter Days, which to be honest was becoming a big headache. It was too big, had 150 staff, and it was just crisis management. And I was going to sell out, and I was going to use the money to create my next business, which would be a health spa for the soul, because I started to get interested in meditation, and I just thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a kind of place you could go that would be a transformational health spa for the soul that you could go, and this is back in like the early 2000s. And so we embarked on this massive campaign, and okay, who here has read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill? Yes?
No, it's on my reading list. There's a lot of Tony Robbins and stuff.
Yeah. It's incredible. So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Who's read it? Show of hands. Okay. I really would say to you, get that book and read it. It's a very, very powerful book. Not just about how to get rich, but about the power of the mind and the power of tapping into the universe, the thing that I started by talking about. Shh. So one of the interesting things at that point is that we had an invitation to go and do another experience, and it was to go to Skibo Castle, to test Skibo Castle, which is a massive luxury castle in Scotland, and it was the home of Andrew Carnegie, and I didn't have a clue who he was, apart from he was the richest philanthropist in the early days of the years of the 20th century. And it was him that inspired Napoleon Hill to write Think and Grow Rich. And we actually sat at his desk and wrote the business plan that would take Red Letter Days to the flotation. And I remember sitting at Andrew Carnegie's desk and asking him for his help to help. I'm going to get emotional talking about this. I sent a little prayer to say, Andrew Carnegie, please would you help me create my health spa for the soul? And actually, interestingly, from that point, everything crumbled and collapsed with this business, Red Letter Days. And we embarked on this massive expansion program, parachuted in a chief exec from a big corporate to run it, made huge mistakes, set big sales targets, did TV advertising, which completely flopped. And so many things hit that business at the same time. And literally the business disintegrated, and I spent 2.5 years desperately trying to save the business, clinging on through ego and like fear of failure, clinging on, trying to kind of keep this business alive. And I'd poured, it was like 15 years in, I poured 15 years of my life, everything I had into this business. And so to lose it was just like the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. And the interesting thing was that eventually we were finally forced into administration. We actually had £3.3 million at bank when we were forced into administration. because the banks had bonded our credit card takings. So although there was £3.3 million cash there, they wouldn't let us touch the money because we had a contingent liability, and it's too complicated to go into, but it was just like the most horrendous experience. And I really learned from that experience, and this is another really key point in business: be the one to control the money. Because whoever controls the money, whether they're right or wrong, or it's legal or illegal, whoever holds the money has the power in business. So if you don't have the money, it doesn't matter if it's like legally yours, if you don't have the money, that can put you out of business. So whatever joint ventures you do, whatever contracts you agree, be the one to control the money. Very important point, probably a bit of an advanced point, but hopefully I'll plant that and you'll remember it in some stage down the line. So the thing is, the interesting thing was, looking back, I held on to that business for far too long, and I would really say in life, sometimes you can really get into fear of losing the business, fear of losing that relationship, that man you're in love with, or that home that you're attached to, whatever it might be, or that course you're on at university where you really don't like the degree but you're too frightened to leave it. Have the courage to let go of anything that isn't working and just have absolute trust and faith. Because actually, in the run-up to that, losing my business, I just thought it would be the worst possible thing in the world. But actually, looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. The best thing that ever happened to me, because I realized as stuff unfolded that actually Red Letter Days was just a warm-up act. And I'd just been on Dragon's Den. And literally the show had just aired, and of course my business had just crashed in this glare of kind of media publicity. It was on every newspaper, it was even on the news bulletins, Channel 4, BBC Breakfast, and everyone wanted me to come and speak at their events and, to talk about my experiences. And so suddenly this whole new world emerged where my business was now my personal brand, and I was being asked to speak about my experiences. And at every event that I spoke at, people would come up to me afterwards and say, would you be my mentor? I've got a business, I need help. And so I started doing mentoring, and then for people who couldn't afford one-to-one mentoring, I started creating online business products that were very low cost, that would help people, and workshops and seminars, and just as a way of helping people on their business journey. And before I knew it, I had a whole new business and a whole personal brand that was far more powerful than my previous one. And so this is from Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich: in every adversity lies the seeds of opportunity. We go through life judging. We're constantly judging. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? Business failure, bad. Business success, brilliant. But actually, every situation in life has opportunity. Every problem has a golden lining. And when you go through life saying, wow, this disaster that's just befallen me, I wonder what magic's going to come out of it. I wonder what magic's around the corner for me. And that way you never get kind of sucked into that black pit of despair. And one of the things that actually came through for me was an offer to write a book. And I was just basically given an advance, a lump sum, to write any book that I wanted to. And obviously I couldn't write how I made it, how successful I am. So I actually decided to write a book about the fine line between success and failure. Not just my story, but the story of 20 other entrepreneurs who had hit a problem in their business journey, and either they'd pulled back from the brink or they'd fallen over and they'd revitalized, and it had actually proved to be the best thing in their life. Like Gerald Ratner, he actually transformed as a result of losing Ratner's, even though at the time it was devastating for him. And I write about him in my book. But the interesting thing was, how long have I got actually, Hussein? I'm rambling on here, aren't I? A couple of minutes, oh God, okay, right. One of the things about this book was, it's a book actually about keeping faith, hope and optimism even in the dark night of the soul. And I said to the publisher, I don't want you to call it Business Nightmares. It's such a negative title. It's too dark. I really want it to be called something light and positive and encouraging. And they just said to me, Rachel, in the UK, business books with negative titles sell 10 times better than business books with positive ones. So we're sticking with it. But it was a really fascinating experience and also a great opportunity to interview loads of my heroes and heroines to write that. And so as a result of all of that mentoring and work and experience, what I actually discovered that what I was attracting loads of clients who were transformational thought leaders and teachers and other mentors and coaches. And what I actually really got was what they needed far more than advice was actually the marketing tools and the technology to help them to amplify their brand and get their teachings out. And so after several years of doing mentoring, I thought, actually, I've got the grounds for my next business. And so last year, I formulated a new business called Source. And Source is a marketing portal and technology platform designed to help thought leaders create online products, monetize their business, and amplify their personal brands. So that's my latest business. So I just really want to say, just to conclude, absolutely in business, when you get into flow, when you get into that flow of living your dream, working through your passion, having fun with it, and you know, if business is hard work and it's like a real chore, then you're really kind of not on the right track. To me, when you get into that flow, life becomes effortless, business becomes joyful, money starts to show up, and life becomes very wonderful. And so, you know, when you get into business and when you get into that flow, into that success, you really start to shape a fulfilling life. And I didn't agree actually with Brad. I don't think there are two islands, one over here with wealth, one over here with health and family. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and more. So create your island that contains all of the stuff you want, all of the prosperity, all of the abundance, all of the great relationships, all of the love, all of the health that you can ever imagine. And you will get all of that if you give others all of the great stuff that they want, because this is the world that we're living in. It's not about me, it's about we. And if you can give all the other people everything that they want in life, you will get everything that you want. So thank you very much for listening.
Hello? All right, we have time for a few questions. I'd like to start off and ask a question myself. And the question is, once you go through a business failure, how do you pull yourself up to get back through it? Because as through your story, a lot of your life was spent with the first project. How would you pull yourself back up from it?
Yeah, well, it was a bit difficult for me because I had a Daily Mail reporter camped in the garden. And and it was actually quite, I mean, it was quite embarrassing, to be honest, because I really didn't want to get out from under the duvet, to be quite honest. I mean, it was just horrendous. And I absolutely felt like a hideous failure. I mean, I really did. I just thought this is the end. And Trevor McDonald did a TV show called Exit the Dragon, and it was just all my people I thought were friends and suppliers I'd made hundreds of thousands of pounds for, my chairman, all basically slagging me off. And I just thought, I will never recover from this. And actually what happened that night, it went out on ITV about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and I went into my home office and I switched on my email, and all of these amazing messages were like just coming into my email box, you know, some from friends, but others from people that I just didn't know, just saying, don't let the bastards grind you down, we love you, don't let this, you know, you've got to keep going. And I just really got from that, oh my goodness. And actually a lot of those messages are still on my website as a tribute to those people, because I can absolutely see how, and you do read of some entrepreneurs that lose it all, like dousing themselves in petrol and like setting fire to, you know, if they're about to go into bankruptcy or lose it all. And, you know, in life, a great coach of mine said to me, you know, Rachel, if you want to be a master of prosperity and coaching and be a great mentor in business, you've been shown the light side of business. You've been shown the amazing making millions. You need to experience the dark side. You need to experience the shadow, because when you experience the shadow and you go into the darkness, that's how you achieve mastery. And I really learned that through going through that experience. It was part of my personal training, my cosmic training for achieving mastery in business and wealth. And understanding the true meaning of wealth is nothing to do with how much money that you have. It's all about flow. And if you can let all your money go just as you breathe, to the point where your lungs are empty, in the total trust that there will be air to breathe in again, you can let all your money go because you're good enough at flowing money. Breathe it out, breathe it in. Make money, spend it, make it, spend it. If you can get into that flow around money, to me, that's true mastery.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Any other questions? Yep.
I was just wondering, what was your dream that triggered Red Letter Days? What was your idea that started you wanting to do a business of your own after your situation, to take you out of the situation you were in, to start your own?
Yeah, well, I'd grown up above my dad's business, so business was in my blood. So it wasn't a decision to go into business. I always knew one day that I would run a business, but I didn't know what and I didn't know when. But I knew that my career, I just want to say this actually, because I started in accountancy and I was on the career ladder, and I just got to the point, and I was at Arthur Andersen, it was then the top #1 accountancy firm in the world, and I had a great career, and I could have stayed there for the BMW and the great salary and had a lovely life. And I just remember just thinking, this isn't enough for me, you know. And I just left and went traveling, and that was when I thought, I'm going to live my dream and do a business, but I didn't know what. But, you know, sometimes when you're ready, the inspiration appears. And actually, the inspiration for that business, I went off traveling to America, came back, took a freelancing job, and one of my clients was just this funny little company called Scrooge and Marley that did experience cards, and they were making losses, and it was all really crappily done. And I was looking at this, and I said, this is a great idea. But, you know, the execution was really bad. And who was saying, who's going to steal my idea? Someone over there was saying, oh, but what if they steal my idea? I guarantee you, ideas are 10 a penny. Implementation is everything, and there are very few people who can implement and take an idea from a seed and grow that whole garden from it. So don't worry about people stealing your ideas, because anyone can have an idea, anyone can steal an idea. I meet so many people who are like, oh, I had the same idea for Twitter like 10 years ago. You know, but why didn't you act on it? Because people who can make stuff happen, that's a very rare gift, and very few people have got that, the ability to take an idea and actually make it into a business.